Welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. When you're ready to transform your sales for today's transforming market, we've got you covered with your host, the queen of cold calling and founder of Salesology, award-winning author, speaker, sales trainer, and coach, Wendy Weiss.
Hi, welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. And I'm your host, Wendy Weiss. I am the founder of Salesology and creator of the Salesology prospecting method. And I am also known as the queen of cold calling. And today I have a very special guest, Simon Severino. He is the CEO and founder of Strategy Sprints. Simon is a LinkedIn top voice on sales and leadership and sales prospecting. He is a shrink turned CEO, and he had to learn the importance of working on the business rather than in the business. So now Simon helps business owners supercharge sales and reclaim 14 hours every week. I'm going to have to ask him about that. And he does this through his Strategy Sprints method. He is the author of Strategy Sprints. He is the inventor of the Strategy Sprints method. He is a YouTuber, a TEDx speaker, a Forbes contributor. He is a triathlete. He has appeared on over 13,000 podcasts. So I guess today it's 13,001. And when he's not supercharging sales, you find him swimming, biking, running, and tricking his 3 kids into outdoor activities so they can't escape his annoying, shrinky questions. Welcome, Simon.
Wendy, thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
Glad to have you here. And so I'm actually going to begin someplace that I don't usually begin, but I absolutely have to ask, what are your annoying, shrinky questions?
Ooh, so my kids, they find every question annoying. How was your day? They're 8, 5, and 2. So Olympia, the 2-year-old, okay, she is more open to stuff. She dialogues about everything. Her highlight of the day is just walking out there and we see a bug and we are in bliss. We see a dog, oh my God, we're in ecstasy. But then the 5-year-old, how was your day? Did I tell you that I love you? Papa, stop it. So everything is a shrinky, annoying question that I say most of the time.
Okay, well, fingers crossed they grow out of it eventually. So now I will begin where I usually do begin. And how did you become the CEO and founder of Strategy Sprints? What's the backstory?
22 years ago, I had majored in psychology and philosophy. I needed a job, a real job. And I was lucky because the big consultancies at that time, they were looking for people with the best grades independently of what they had majored in. And so that was my lucky moment. I said, hey guys, best grades. And I had a job at one of the big strategy consultancies. So next day I was in the plane and flying to Fortune 500 boards, and they would throw their big problems at me and I had to solve them. Those problems were all go-to-market problems. How can we beat our competitor? Number 2 is trying to eat some market shares. How do we stop them from eating market shares? Can we increase our pricing power? Can we increase our uniqueness in the market? Can we expand with some product lines in existing markets or additional markets? Those were the questions that they were throwing at me. And many of my colleagues, they were buried in spreadsheets and were, oh my God, this is so intense. This is terrible. We have to work 23 hours a day. I want to quit. The psychologist in me was, oh my God, I'm just getting warmed up here. This is amazing. It's high pressure. It's very important. And it's, as you know, in go-to-market, it's all 80% psychology. So I was in my element without being in my industry, in my line of skills, but I was actually in my line of skills. And so I loved it. It was emotionally challenging, super intense. I learned so much. 22 years later, I'm still doing that thing, just on my own now.
Okay. So I'm curious. When I introduced you, Simon, in your bio, um, it says that you had to learn the importance of working on the business rather than in the business. And this is going to be a two-part question, but let's just start with, could you define that?
In the business is clients needs this, deliver it. They have a question, answer it. That's in the business. Something is broken, repair it, right? Oh my God, the website doesn't respond. Let's go repair it. This is in the business. And most of our time as solopreneurs, small business owners, we have 17 hats and we are working in the business, responding to stuff. I did that for a few years and then I realized it's a very stupid way of operating. I had to get my head out of in the business and get at least 1-2 hours per day to think about growing the business. Now, in order to do that, I had to carve out some times in my calendar. So what I did, because I have more energy in the morning, I said, okay, morning, let me not have any meetings before lunch. So client work, I will do after lunch. Interviews on podcasts, I will do after lunch. And in the morning, I would have just a big blocker in my calendar from 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. that said deep work. That's it. It was blocked every day. It said deep work. This was my way of starting to have some strategic work. Now, sometimes it would just mean writing a longer article, which maybe later on could become a chapter of the book. On some other days, it was, let me think through like a whole marketing funnel from end to end. When should this quiz or audit take place? What's the call to action from there? What should we automate? Those were bigger questions that I needed like 2-3 hours in isolation to work on. Then I had a draft of something. And then in the afternoon, I would share this with my team and say, hey, can we build this? Also, hiring is working on the business. So it's thinking about how to grow the business, thinking about strategic partnerships. I started writing the first book, Strategy Sprints. All these things, to me, was the difference between just delivering client work and working on the business. As soon as I realized, oh, this is cool, I fired myself completely from operations, so from delivering the work, and I started teaching it to my colleagues, which shifted me then from being the operator to being then actually the CEO.
Okay. So you actually did answer my second question, which was if you are a solopreneur and there's no one else there that you can delegate to, or not a lot of people there to delegate to, you can't quite escape working in the business, but while you're transitioning, there's that in-between point. And what I heard you say is put it on your calendar, just block it out. And that's the working on your business time. And then, yeah, if you're transitioning, you still need that time to work in the business. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, over time, if you do it that way, you can transition to the point that you are simply working on the business, not in the business.
Time blocking was one element. The other element was using software. Some software took some of the admin work from me. And the next was bringing in freelancers who actually took the task from me. And then the last one was to have like a core team that does the delivery, the client work. And I became their coach. So instead of me being the coach, every Monday I said, guys, there is coach meeting. And so every Monday I was now the head coach of the coaches. I told them everything that I knew, like this is what I do in week 0, in week 1, in week 2, in week 3. This became a certification. So now they were certified strategy sprints coaches. They were paying for it, which is very nice because it created not much of an additional revenue, but at least it de-risked my cash flow. Because in a weak month, I had much less costs, right? I didn't have bloated personnel, which you don't want to have usually, right? But I had a very lean machine. When there was more work, I had capacity for more work. I just needed to add one more sprint coach to the mix in another time zone, in another country. And when there was low work in a month, it was no problem. So it was a very resilient business model. Now, not for every business, the certification model is the right model, but we explore with our clients IP lending, online courses, hybrid models, programs, group work, masterminds. So when you have time to work on the business, you get additional new ideas on what you can do to add revenues without adding time. Because the first thing that you have to unbundle is time from value. That's not the same. You don't need to create more value. You don't need to put in more time. There are smarter ways to do that.
So then what is step one? Is step one simply the time blocking and it moves from there, or is something else?
Time blocking plus starting to write down what works. I like to simplify and say, okay, a business is marketing, sales, and delivery. We call it operations. So how do we do marketing? And we start writing down, like I would tell you, hey, Wendy, this is how I do marketing. And then my assistant, she would write it down. Now we have what we call a standard operating procedure. There is a mini process on how we do marketing. Takes a week, then we move on to sales. How do we do sales? We write down the same thing, another week. Third week, we write down how do we do the client delivery? Week 0, week 1, week 2, week 3. Usually this is what happens. Now, after these 3 weeks, which we do in the first month of the strategy sprint, now you have a minimum set of processes. This changes everything. Because now if you bring in a freelancer, you can tell them, guys, this is what we do. Now you learn it. Over the next month, we're doing this together. The plan is that next month you do this alone.
Well, I love this because when I'm working with clients, very few of them have a prospecting process that's written down that they can plug new hires into. They usually just say, oh, so-and-so is a born salesperson. And then it turns out, guess what? They're not. And things kind of go downhill from there. So I love this idea of having a process. What if the process changes?
Oh, they change all the time. That's why you keep it simple. And, a year later, latest, they break because you are now on a higher capacity, on a higher complexity level. So they break again. We have a process for changing the process. It's very simple. It says, which parts can we make simpler for our clients? Which parts can we make simpler for ourselves? What can we eliminate from this process? If once a month you spend an hour going through the processes just with this little checklist, you are continuously updating them. That's why it's important that every process has one owner, because that owner will say updated at date, and there is always a current date, and they have to make sure that every month they go over it, because processes, they grow with us, they change with us. The more your market changes, the more the processes have to adapt. If you are in markets with high changing rate, like tech, for example, they change more often.
So you said there were 3 buckets essentially for the processes. There's marketing, there's sales, there's operations. So is there a different owner for each one, or is that you because you're the CEO?
Well, no, the CEO has none of those hats. But in the beginning, you have all these 3 hats plus the leadership hat. Then you start giving away one hat. Marketing goes to somebody else. Now they own full marketing. Then you give sales to somebody. Usually you go first operations, then marketing, then sales. Now you have given away 3 hats. Now you are the CEO. Before that, you are just everything. You're an employee for everything. Now that you have given away these 3 hats, Now you are officially a CEO. Now your job is to grow this whole thing. Strategic partnerships, IP scaling, IP lending, improving the systems, starting, the next leg of growth. And that is mainly thinking time. You have to think about things and you will come up with ideas. But you start by giving the whole bucket, more ops to somebody, whole bucket marketing to somebody, and then they start hiring people. So for example, my marketing manager, Michelle, she is now hiring Lou for specific marketing subtasks. He is just the guy getting me on podcasts. And she hired somebody else to help me refine my website. That's Judith. But head of marketing is Michelle, and she is now hiring. She has a budget, she is hiring. And I stay the CEO. I don't mess with that. I fully trust Michelle. She will get whatever she needs. She will ask me if she needs help, but she's running that part.
So this all sounds really wonderful. I'm kind of curious, how do you keep yourself from micromanaging? Because I know that's something a lot of business owners have a really hard time with, letting go.
Yeah, I'll give you my secret. Get a life. So I love mountain biking. If the sun is shining, I want to get out and run. I have 3 kids. I enjoy all of them. I have a wife. I want to have dates with my wife. I want to go for a dinner. This was my trick, because as much as I love working and micromanaging, I love my life even more. So that was my trick. Now, if I want to get out, I have to trust that Michelle runs it. Is she always perfect? Of course not. I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Will it be fine on Monday? It will still be fine on Monday. Relax. You can do a couple mistakes per week. We are 22 years in the business. We have made every week multiple mistakes, and we still have survived so many competitors because we are still around. We are still improving. We're giving our best. So yeah, that was my trick. Find something that's even more fun for you than work.
Okay, you heard it here first. The secret to delegating, the secret to not micromanaging. You've heard it from Simon Severino, CEO and founder of Strategy Sprints. Quote, get a life. So thank you for that, those words of wisdom, Simon. And we're going to pause now for a word from our sponsor. But when we come back, I'm hoping for more words of wisdom. I want to know how to save 14 hours a week. But now, a word from our sponsor, the Salesology Vault. Just about every guest that I've interviewed on the Salesology Conversations with Sales Leaders podcast has had a gift for our listeners. And that does include my special guest, Simon Severino, CEO and founder of Strategy Sprints. So what we've done is we've taken all of those gifts and we put them in one place just for you. We call it the Salesology Vault, and it's packed full of free gifts from sales leaders, sales experts, marketing gurus, revenue generation experts. And we add another gift every single week. When we release a podcast, we add a gift. So you can log in as often as you'd like. You can download as many gifts as you'd like. It's all free. So the link to the Salesology Vault is in the show notes. So as soon as you finish listening to this podcast, go to the show notes, click on the link. You will be glad that you did. And we are back with my special guest, Simon Severino, CEO and founder of Strategy Sprints. So, Simon, also from your bio, you said that you help these business owners reclaim 14 hours every single week. So could you give me some do's and some don'ts for business owners that want to reclaim their time so they can get a life?
Yeah. Let me share with you one tool that I use every day. It's called the Daily Flow, and later on we can even send them to download it for free. So the Daily Flow is really a tool where I write down how did I allocate my time today. So 8 a.m. I did this, 9 a.m. I did this, 11 a.m. I did this. It asks me two questions tonight when I close my computer for the day, literally my computer, I shut it down. And it asks me two questions. Simon, which of these tasks that you did today will you delegate tomorrow? And Simon, if you would live more intentionally and more freely, what would you do tomorrow? So I have to pick a task, for example, bookkeeping or editing my own podcast, something that I did today where I say, somebody else should do this tomorrow. And so I pick it, I write it down, editing. And then it asks me, okay, and if you would live more freely and more intentionally, what would you do tomorrow? For example, I would write maybe a book. So I write it down. Now, if you write it down just once, nothing will happen. But if tomorrow you do the same exercise and you see this popping up again, editing and book, now you feel it, and now you are kind of committing to yourself to actually give it to the next person and to make time in the calendar for writing a book. Because these things, we need some time. That's why it's a practice. Delegation is a practice. It's not you do it once and it's gone. It's more of getting into the flow of reviewing how you're spending your time and selecting what's next to delegate. So I do this with the daily flow, and over 6-7 years, now you know that I have a person for each department that's running it. But I started just one person doing everything and writing it down and selecting the next thing. And I use the daily flow for that. People can download it at strategysprints.com, and it's the daily flow.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. If you are that solopreneur and you are the one, you're wearing all the hats, you're doing everything, this is an aspirational list. If you write down every day, I want to delegate editing my podcast. By the way, I have delegated editing the podcast. But if that's something you want to delegate, you write it down every single day, and then you say, I want to write a book instead. Over time, you're going to make the space, you're going to find the wherewithal to delegate editing the podcast, and you're going to make the space to write that book. Am I understanding what you're saying?
Yes, so it's your actual day. So I spent 2 hours doing bookkeeping, 3 hours doing client work, 1 hour creating content. Now I say, what do I want to get rid of? Bookkeeping. I mark it for today. Tomorrow, I do again an hour of bookkeeping. In the evening, I mark bookkeeping again. Now that I've marked it twice, now it goes from aspirational to actual. Like now I feel it in my body. I really want to get rid of this now. So now it's getting real. What happens next? I will ask friends, colleagues, coaches, hey, how can I get work? Who can I give bookkeeping to? And that's the next step. As soon as you commit to doing it, you will find a way to do it. And so the first step is really you have to commit to yourself to give it away. In that moment, we don't know how to do it, but the moment we commit to do it, we start looking for options. And when we start looking for options, a few days later, a few weeks later, the option will pop up and we will do it. That's the getting rid of a task. The second one is...
you don't have the resources to pay the bookkeeper. You can write it down every day, but if you don't have, and you can really feel it. That was actually the very first thing I ever delegated in my business, was I hired a bookkeeper.
And how did you do it? Yeah, it seems you found the resources.
Yeah, but not right at the beginning. Unfortunately, my first career was I was a dancer. I count up to 8 and I start over again. So it's really a problem. But it took me quite a while. It was not 2 days, but I did it.
Exactly. Because this is what happens. As soon as you commit to doing it, at some point you will find the resources. And one question to know if you are at the resources level right now or not is to ask, can I create 3 times more value in that hour? So bookkeeping, what does this cost per hour? Can I create 3 times more value if I spend that hour in a different way? So let's say I'm paying $30 per hour for the bookkeeper. Can I create $90 in an hour? If not, then I'm not ready yet to delegate it. But if yes, can I make, if I am great at cold calls like you are, can I make calls that bring in 90 hours? If that's yes, or maybe I'm great with marketing, can I create a video that potentially brings in a client? Then I might be at the point where I have the resources.
Okay. So if I'm understanding what you're saying, then following this process of every day figuring out what you're going to delegate and what you'd rather do instead, that's what saves ultimately 14 hours a week? Or is there something else involved?
Well, that's the beginning. If I had more hours, I could share all the 274 tools that we use in a strategy sprint. But this is the very first that I would do. And if I was listening to this and I was like, ooh, I want to free up 14 hours, I would start with writing down how am I allocating my time right now and what's the one next thing that I want to get rid of. And if you do this regularly, you will get up to 14 hours. If you book a sprint coach, you get there in the next 3 months. But if you're just listening and want to get started on your own, I would do the daily flow and starting with that. Yes.
Okay. So I know that you have a gift for all of our listeners. I'm betting this tool that we just discussed is in there. So
yes.
share details of your gift for all of our listeners, please.
Yes, you can download the daily flow at strategysprints.com/tools and use it for a couple of days. It's probably helpful. If you want to get even deeper, you can read the book, Strategy Sprints. It's on Amazon, because in the book, there are many examples from our clients, how they use those tools and how they solved the pricing problem, the time problem, and the problems that they had as an entrepreneurs. And we have plenty. So sometimes it helps just plugging into blueprints that work. But yeah, the daily flow, it's on strategysprints.com and people can download it for free.
Okay, wonderful. And if you did not have a chance to jot down that URL, it's okay, because that link is in the show notes. So as soon as you finish listening to this podcast and you want to download Simon's tools, go to the show notes, click on the link. And Simon, if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
I hang out on all social medias, Simon Severino, and our website is probably the best place, strategysprints.com. If you want to talk to us, boom, click, jump on our calendar, and we're happy to talk.
Okay, wonderful. And the links to all of Simon's social media, along with the link to his website, strategysprints.com, that's all in the show notes. So as soon as you finish listening to this podcast and you want to connect with Simon, go to the show notes, click on one of the links. And you have been listening to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, with my special guest, Simon Severino, CEO and founder of Strategy Sprints. And if you have found value in listening to today's podcast, then please think about one business owner, one entrepreneur, one solopreneur, somebody that you know that you believe might also find value in listening to the podcast. And please do share the link with them. And until we meet again, visualize yourself surrounded by cash. Really large bills.
You've been listening to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. Be sure to follow so that you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share it with your friends. Tune in every week for more exciting insights and wisdom on transforming sales. And until next time, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, very large bills.